Howdy folks, it's October. There's pumpkins, and of course everyone loves to carve pumpkins for the fall, but this is a wood carving channel. We're not gonna carve this. Instead, we're gonna carve like this. Now, of course you gotta get in the pumpkin mood. Someone is naturally gonna ask you, well, can you carve another one? And the answer is yes, you can carve another one. And then someone else is gonna ask you for another pumpkin, and so then you're gonna start doing chicken math and your pumpkins are gonna start to multiply. And then naturally, someone's gonna ask you, well, do your pumpkins actually stack? And the answer that you're gonna give them is, of course they stack. Of course I can stack my pumpkins, right? They're gonna ask, well, can you put a different hat on there? And the answer that you're gonna tell them is, yes, I can put a different hat on there because it's magnetic. And there you have it. That's exactly what we're gonna do today. We're gonna carve a pumpkin. And if you were wondering, I got a stencil for that. So here's the lineup, folks. All these are flexible stencils. So you can see, you can bend them, you can twist them, do everything you want to them. And there's 5 different faces, and of course you can mix and match them. So this guy is that guy. It looks kind of like a Jack Skellington, but it's not Jack Skellington, guys. There's this guy, which is there. This guy, which he's big old bug eyes. And I think on the back, yep, back we have that one, and on this back we have that one right there. And this one's kind of like a hodgepodge between a couple of them. The round eye, the X, and then this mouth, which is kind of creepy and kind of cool looking. I think this one is a little bit combination as well. So these eyes and then that mouth. As you can see, the mouths on these don't have these extra markings on there, but I think you can kind of get the point. You don't need to put everything on there. And of course, I'm not going to give you a stencil for a circle. Because, well, or for a pumpkin shape, because that's kind of silly. Instead, I'll give you kind of general shapes. So you see this guy, it looks like a round pumpkin like that. This one's a little bit more boxy, so kind of like that. Pumpkins do come in different shapes and sizes, so, you know, kind of mix and match. Anyway, I'm going to give you some tips and pointers on what sizes to use. These are 1.5 inch blocks, and then these are 2-inch blocks. And then, of course, I made a hat. So my other hat rolled off the table there, but I think you get the point. And then, of course, all these have magnets on the bottom. So it's important that if you do put the magnets, that you put the correct polarity, because if you don't, then, well, you know, those don't line up. But if you do it like that, we'll do it like that. So there's that one. And then, of course, there's the different sizes that I cut. So there's different diameters. So you see that's a 1-inch diameter. This is actually, I think, a 3/4 inch diameter, although it doesn't seem like it might be a little bit smaller. But anyway, I'll give you some of those tips and tricks, and we'll get started carving a 1.5 inch piece right now. Hey guys, shameless plug over here. If you want to know where all our stencils get released, make sure you get onto the email list in the description below. Okay, so today we're going to be using a 1.5 inch wide block by roughly 2 inches tall. So if you're using 1.5 inches, the maximum height that I suggest is 2 inches. If you can go as little as 1.5 inches, any less than that, it just looks too wide. Any taller, it just looks really long. So this one's kind of getting on the verge of being too long, but you can see it still turned out, right? Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to draw the diagonals on the end grain faces. Right, so we're getting the exact center right there. So all I'm doing is connecting the corners. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but, you know, roughly. Okay. Now let's say that we want this to be a pumpkin that receives a hat. And I want this hat to be, let's see what the diameter is that I made this guy. So right here, we'll measure that. That is roughly 3/4. It may not look like it, but it's roughly 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so half of 3/4 of an inch is 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to be using a compass. So this is a really cheap hobby grade compass. I have my needle, my sharp point right there. So right there, and that sets to 3/8 of an inch. Perfect. Okay, right there. So now I'm going to do, let's see, the top. So I want this to be the top because, well, it's kind of wonky. So when you cut these blocks of wood, just make sure that you cut them as square as possible. It's not always the easiest thing to do. Okay, so all I'm doing is drawing a circle there. And this is going to tell me the smallest amount that I can make this section. Okay, now for the underside, I want to be able to receive another pumpkin. So I'm going to go just under 1/2 inch. So right there, as you can see, 1/2 inch. Now I'm going to go to the underside, and here we go. And that's going to give me my pumpkin shape. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to do another ring, and this one I'm going to do as 3/4 of an inch radius. So right there I'm just going to the outside, and all I want to do is mark out the circle, the largest circle that I can get from this pumpkin. So it should be the same, both top and bottom. Of course my center is not exactly in the center, so there you go. That's not so bad. Okay, cool. So let's see, let's put a T for top. T for top, and B for bottom. So here's my block of wood. All I'm going to do is knock off these corners right here, and I'm going to essentially make myself a big cylinder. So here we go. So there it is. There is our 1.5 inch diameter cylinder. So that's why we did the outer circle. So now we have a cylinder that's pretty uniform. It doesn't need to be perfect. So now the next step is going to be to round over these edges. And I'll tell you that there really is no right or wrong way to do this. Just kind of start, I would say, from here, and then kind of connect it to this line and round it over, you know. So some of these have more of a rounding than others, so you can see that one it's kind of round like that. This one's a little bit more drastic, especially with the smaller diameter circle up top. And this one, you know, just kind of give it a pumpkin shape. I don't really know how better to describe that. So there's plenty of tools that you could use. Obviously a knife is one of them. So this line is not a don't go past that line, it's a that's the minimum. So you can go, I would recommend that you go into it more than you leave. So don't leave the line, take the line, and if you have to, go a little bit past it, right? So that's perfectly fine. Okay, so that's the top. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the bottom, except I'm going to use something else to do this one and see if it works out. So this is a essentially just a number 1. It's a chisel, and if your hands get tired with that knife, you can always use this guy. So you can use the flat side or the bevel side. Be careful with the flat side because it tends to bury itself. With the bevel side into the wood, you can scoop. Whereas with the chisel, with the flat side, it just wants to ride the bevel and bury itself into the wood. So just be cautious of that, okay? But it is a very useful tool nonetheless. So the same thing with this bottom line. I suggest that you take the line, and you can see that the slope is kind of getting shallower, steeper, I don't know, in relation to which surface you're talking about. But you can see that this pumpkin is kind of flattening out at the bottom over here. And that's kind of what you want. You want it to be a gradual transition. You don't want it to be super abrupt. Okay, there we go. Okay, now give it a little bit more shaping if you need to. And then we're about ready to do the face. So I just like to give it as many facets as possible while making it round. It's always cool to see all the chips that you left behind because that's evidence of how many strokes you took. So it's a little bit daunting when you see your floor littered with them and you're like, there are literally thousands of chips down there. That's insane. Okay, I'm gonna angle this a little bit more so it looks more like a pumpkin. Okay, now there's a good shape. Okay, let's go and work on the face. Okay, so now it comes time to pick the face. So, you have to be you definitely have to make a decision as to which face, or rather which surface you're going to put the face on. So I'll tell you that the surface that you should pick is the one where the grain is flat. So you can see the grain here is going like that. So I want to pick this surface right here, so as much as possible, because this surface is gonna have the least amount of tear out. Because if I pick something like this where the grain is going up and down, I'm gonna be fighting that grain direction every single time. Whereas like this, it's more less grain changes on this surface. If it were flat, it would be better, but because it's round, this is the best one that we can choose. So learn that from Dalo. Anyway, I think I'm gonna do this one for the eyes, and then I'm gonna pick a different mouth. So let's see, I want to put the eyes like this. So here's the tricky part, is that you have to kind of hold it in place. So let's do one. Let's do this X first. But it definitely helps in laying this stuff out. Okay, so there's the X. Good, so let's put the other eye, so we'll line it up to the X. Let's do this one. This guy's kind of got like a little swirly bit at the top of the eye, which is kind of cool. Okay, cool. So now the mouth. Let's pick something like this guy, big toothy grin. So you have to kind of think about where it is that you're going to put it. As you can see, and don't. So when I've done this before, you got to kind of do it and then check and see if it's actually square, and because there's a possibility that it could be kind of canted or something like that. So let's just do this and see if we're in the right ballpark. Oh, that looks good. Yeah. Okay, I think that'll work out. There. So, all I was doing was making sure that the lines look kind of square to the eyes. Right. So don't do that little stem in the middle. That's just to hold this stencil together. That works. Look at that. That's kind of cute. Alright, and if you need to, you can always open that mouth up a little bit. It doesn't necessarily need to be that small. Okay, but anyway, I think that's a good starting point. Let's go ahead and carve it out. Okay, so it may not look like much right now, but I promise you this figure is going to transform. So all I do is I score these lines, and you know me, I'm using a flex cut roughing knife, because, well, I'm a big believer that the tool doesn't make the carver, quite the opposite. And I've learned quite a bit of things with this knife, and if it does ever fail me, I know exactly where to buy one. I can get it relatively quick, and I can always fix it up to how I fixed this one up. So yeah, I could possibly get a nicer knife, but this one's working out for me quite nicely. Okay, and I may switch to a detail knife. In fact, right now, let's go ahead and switch to this OCC Shipley. At least I think it is an OCC Shipley. Okay, and all I'm doing is relieving, essentially doing a little bit of chip carving. Right, trying to get the material out from the middle there. So, what I suggest is if you have a larger block of wood, that you carve up to the line, maybe even a little bit past it. So in this case I did a poor job of that, but you see my cuts are just inside the line. I could have stood to do it on the outside of the line. So maybe that's what I'll do on the mouth to make it a little bit larger. So it does seem a little bit undersized for this block of wood. Okay, see, let's even it out, make it look nice. Okay, and now I'm going to chamfer each of these cuts. So right here, like that. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. I know it's a little bit blown out. This basswood turns out so white, especially against this dark background over here. Excellent. That's a good looking eyeball. Okay, so let's do this next one. So I'm going to switch back to my flex cut, and I'm going to do the other eye. Okay, so the eye, let's start with the big section of the eye first. Be careful with grain direction here. You may need to come back in and do a few more stop cuts. Okay, and once again, just chamfer the outside. So make sure you pay attention to grain direction. Remember, it's going up and down. Now, as you can see, this little part of the eyebrow, we're just doing a very slight relief. And we're also going to chamfer that. So I don't want any of that torn out grain. Excellent. Okay, now let's move on to the mouth. So this one, like I promised you, I'm going to go on the outside of the line. We'll see if that makes a little bit of a difference in the size. Let's go ahead and chamfer all this out. Alright, so that's a really ugly pumpkin. so we're going to switch over to a different tool now. Just going to use a V tool instead. So I'm going to draw some lines on here. We're going to make these kind of crevices, I guess, for the pumpkin. So I like to do, I guess, 6 lobes for the pumpkin, for each pumpkin. So kind of divide it into thirds on each hemisphere. So like that. Like that. And then obviously the back one. Is that the center? Yeah. So that's the... I got confused with that crosshair on the top there, so... There we go, right there, and then this one right here. Make sure it lines up on the other side, or it doesn't really matter. Just kind of make it look kind of uniform. Okay, so now just use our V tool. So this is a 60-degree V tool. And all I'm doing is doing this. So up here at the top, I then turn my V tool. So there's going uniform on both sides. Then over here at the top, I turn it and I use the wings to really make it a little bit more than what it is. And this one, let's see if we can miss that. Yeah, there it is. That's good right there. Okay, so I'm going to make all these lines from middle to top. Do those elaborate wings up top, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do all the bottoms as well. So the bottoms are the exact same thing. When you get to the very extremes, to the top and bottom, do these wings. You can always do that with the knife as well, but if you have the V tool that can do it, go ahead and use it. That's what they're for. Okay, now let's turn it upside down and do the exact same thing. And remember, the reason that you don't chisel, you don't V-tool uphill, that's it's going to lead to some tear out and it's not going to work out. So just save yourself the pain and chisel downhill. There we go, that's looking better. Pumpkin was a little ugly, now it's a lot better. So let's do a couple more character parts. So I'm going to do this one a little bit more and take these side lobes off some more right around the face. I'm going to come with the knife and fix those up a little bit too. So I like these lobes to be, you know, different. Every pumpkin is a little bit different, right? So this one I want these lobes to be a little bit more drastic. Looks kind of goofy, so I think if he has like more rounded lobes, it'll be more characteristic of a silly pumpkin. Okay, like that. Now, I like to give him a little bit of character as well, so I'm going to randomly, just kind of, you know, as random as I can, give him a couple little cuts here and there. Because no pumpkin is ever perfect. Something like that. So when you turn them around, it's not just kind of like this plain pumpkin, it has some distinguishing features. They don't need to be super long, they don't need to be super deep, but usually they go with the grain. So let's see if that's enough. Maybe one over here. There we go, that looks good. Okay, now I can come with my knife and fix this up a little bit, you know, make that a little bit rounder. I can always make the lobes deeper by using my knife and deepening them. If you have a 30-degree V-tool, that also works. Although, those are, you know, kind of, those don't always work out. Okay, round those lobes over a little bit. We're almost done. There we go. That looks kind of cool. Look at that. Shadow. So if we spin it a little bit, that's a neat looking pumpkin, and that looks very similar to that one, but it's not the same. And of course it has a nice toothy grin like this guy, and we could have obviously made it more like this guy if we wanted to, but anyway, chose that one. So these stencils allow you to make whatever type of faces that you want, and obviously you can repeat them, mix and match, and I don't know, I think this one's going to be pretty cool if you could possibly make that into a Nightmare Before Christmas character if you wanted to. Anyway, that's a pumpkin. And one last thing, I'm going to show you how to put those magnets in. So these are the magnets that we're using. They're, I think, neodymium magnets, and I don't know, I got them on Amazon a long time ago, and I think this is the size that we're going to use right there. Yeah. So, it's important to get the orientation correct. So, here is a hat that I had, so that's essentially how I want it to be oriented. So I'm just going to pull off a couple this side to be able to go like that. Here's the drill that I use. I think it's a 3/8 inch drill bit. Hold it on there. Make sure you're wearing a glove, or put this in a vise, or do this before you carve it so that you don't destroy your hand. That's about as deep as you need to go. That doesn't seem like it's in the center at all. Oh well. So I think that's good for both. So I'm using contact cement. So this is the top. I'm going to put a fair amount in there. Shouldn't really come out. And really, these magnets kind of fit perfectly in that hole anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Okay, so now I just kind of go like this. Make sure that one of the magnets stays in there. Take this hat off for the time being. And kind of slide it off. There's the one that I need. Now I like to use a pair of vice grips, and not for the reason that you think. It's because they have this little flat knob at the bottom. So quickly put it on there and squeeze it in. There it is. So there's that magnet. So you see, now it's pretty good on there. So that hat's not going to come off. So we'll do the exact same thing for the bottom. This one's a little bit deeper, so we'll put a little bit more contact cement in there. So it does have instructions on letting this sit on there and putting it to the surface and waiting 2 minutes, blah blah blah. I don't have time for that nonsense. So once again, check the polarity. So I want it to go like this, right? Because that's the bottom. So this is the bottom, so I need to get me my magnet right here. Once again, just get one of those to peel off. Oh no. Got contact cement all over the magnets. That's okay. Just rub it on the table. And put it on there and squeeze it in. Perfect. Done. Now we'll get the other pumpkin and we'll see. Yep, look at that. That is how you carve a pumpkin and put some magnets on there. So now you can make your own stacking pumpkins. I suggest that you use 1.5 inch stock, maximum 2 inches tall. The least is probably 1.5. And carve yourself some little pumpkins. Happy carving!